fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got everything outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up top!
Oh my god! Oh, big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Six very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go! Oh no!
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
Yeah, so we're using the VRS Direct Force Pro this year. We have a wheel adapter right here, so I'm using the rim I used last year. But the motor right here produces a lot of power, a lot of precision, and it helps me, just feel the car more, feel the car a lot quicker. Especially, this week we're at Sonoma. I can feel it, when it hits the curbs. Any little change in the car, the wheel reacts a lot quicker than your typical gear-driven or belt-driven wheel. For example, if you're on oval and the rear tires break loose, force feedback on it corrects a lot quicker than your typical wheels. There's no resistance pretty much as far as being able to make quick corrections on the wheel. So all that, paired with how precise the wheel itself is, it makes it to where it helps you as a driver, to find that extra hundredth or thousandths of a second. So when you're getting a direct drive wheel, especially the VRS wheel, it's heavy duty. It's got good weight to it, it's not a plastic toy. It feels like you can really beat up on it. A lot of people have issues with their plastic gear-driven wheels just kind of breaking after a couple years. This thing just feels like it can go forever. The forces are really strong where if you might have to let go of the wheel if you get into the wall. You can adjust all that with the settings on it and stuff, but the wheel itself doesn't play around. It's got way more strength than you could ever need, and that's what makes it good, that you can adjust that down to whatever the car needs. So initially you'll be able to get the controller box and the motor together, and eventually you will be able to add a rim onto that option. They'll also be including a button plate on it to put on the rim to have all sorts of different buttons and functionality. Also, pedals are coming, so that's a pretty big deal as well. Hasn't been covered too much, but the goal is to also have pedals to go along with the Direct Force Pro. So that's pretty exciting. The wheel feels good. It feels very much like a real world steering wheel. You just kind of feel like what you would imagine the car to feel like. A real steering wheel in a car is very smooth, it's very direct, very quick, and that's what this wheel feels like.
Good evening and welcome to the streets of Belle for the V8SCOPS support series presented by Racing Sims, round 9 of the season, live on SimSpeed TV. It's the final time we'll see the trucking legends, and they are joined by the V8s. My name is Ryan Jones, and alongside me, Jay Kennedy, who's also on the cameras and making the magic happen as always. Going to be fun to see these two around the streets of Belle today. Jay, always a tricky circuit to get right. It was the OG street circuit to iRacing, if you exclude the test circuit of Long Beach before it was finished. And no one's ever really got it right ever since it was released, I don't think.
No, it's a tough track, and yeah, you're right. Everyone seems to struggle with it as we zoom on in. Not far from the Canadian side of the border is Belle in Detroit, and very, very cool track. And as you said, it's the original official street circuit on iRacing, other than Long Beach. I mean, you can technically say Bathurst, but the Belle circuit in the middle of the parkland. Very, very cool track. 14 turns, mainly known for IMSA and IndyCar. The V8s, though, definitely put on a good show here. We're going to see a very, very fun race tonight in the old FG and VF V8s. Be very, very fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Another 2 100k races.
Should be good. A format not too dissimilar to what we've seen in the recent past in real life, and 2 cars that allegedly race much easier than the modern generation supercars on iRacing now, which should provide plenty of good action. As we take a look at the qualifying times, Jay, they're actually not too far apart, which helps that theory. Just looking at the track there, you can see 14 corners in total, a couple of them not too substantial. The last corner in itself more of a kink, but on old tyres it could get a bit sketchy. But that long back straight can lend itself to some big overtaking maneuvers. But then the track really tightens up. It's a place where overtaking is certainly possible, but it comes with a high risk versus reward factor. Much higher than your permanent tracks, such as Phillip Island or Alton Park. Here's the other one that comes to mind for some bizarre reason. As we take a look at Matt Stevens here, as he comes towards the end of his lap there through turn 14 and across the start-finish line. He's currently fastest of all, and he is not able to go any quicker on that lap. Although, if he hadn't have done his previous benchmark, it still would have put him second. Aaron Gilbert, the man currently trailing him, spins it out of turn 1. Too eager on the throttle. Very easy to do because right across the apex, we've just passed it, as you try to get the power down, is a big crest that has caught out so many famous drivers, including a pace car.
Yeah, that was one of the most infamous moments at Belle. Of course, the boss of Corvette, I think it was, that was driving the pace car at that moment, spun out and hit the wall at the exit of turn 2 as Gavin Cox crosses the line to start a flying lap. We'll take a little look at this one. Matt Stevens has continued on for another flying lap as well, and it looks quite quick. We'll stay with Gavin Cox because Cox at the moment sitting in 6th position. Probably would expect to see him slightly higher than that. We might see him push up towards that top 3, which is where we would hopefully see him by the end of this qualifying session.
Yeah, quite a lot of drivers in here that could play themselves into contention. It's very close at the top. And very close for 3rd place, King, down to O'Keefe, separated by only a couple of tenths of a second. Still riding on board with Cox into that heavy braking zone. Just runs it a bit wide. He missed the apex, although it is a curve that can catch you out if you do nail it. It props you up a bit and can unsettle you and throw you into that concrete on the left. So you do have to be a little cautious through there. And the sweeping left-hander into a right-hander. You've got to keep the car on the left to bring it back for the right. And then you set yourself up for 2 essentially 90-degree right-handers to finish off the lap. And again, he had to backpedal to avoid the concrete. This is very much a cool-down lap at this stage. And in fact, he may come to the pit lane, and he does, for a fresh set of tyres. Of course, the no escape rule means you've got to bring it back to pit lane every time you want to grab some fresh rubber. Michael Whiting could find an improvement on this lap. A 130.3 is previous best. Now you can mark it down as 130.1. Doesn't find positional improvement, but does find 0.2 of a second on the leaderboard, and really committed coming out of the first corner there. So he's continuing on with it with 6 minutes and a bit still to go in this session. Matt Stevens has laid down a whole nother benchmark, Jay. He's now just under half a second clear of Aaron Gilbert.
Very, very good lap he's put into, 29.0. Of course, undefeated in this series when he's been running, but of course jumped in as a wild card, courtesy of RacingSims.co.nz, and the couple of races he has done, has won every single one. So he's in very, very good form. But Reece Harnell comes across the line to complete his next lap on 31. Not enough to improve. Current best is at 30.9.
We've got 16 drivers who have set times so far in this session. There are but a couple more who could put themselves onto the timing sheets. One of them is Ashley Leah. Another one is not quite Blake Delaney, but he will hopefully venture himself further up the timing sheets. Can he best to 130.7? Yes, he can. By 7 tenths, goes way up to P5. Huge improvement from the Fishy Motorsports driver there in the number 08 car. You'll like that. Here's Nathan Tregarthen, currently last of the runners with a time. He will want to improve from there. We know he can do a bit better than that. 131.6, his current best. It's an interesting braking zone the end of that back straight, isn't it, Jay? You've got to pull the car all the way to the right to straighten up your braking area, and you've got to maximize the track. It can make it tricky to overtake because you're almost covering off the inside line just in the natural racing line.
What it does do, though, it opens up the next part of the corner through the fountain section for them to be susceptible to be passed. So if you are running that natural line, it does automatically open yourself up to the next corner to potentially be passed, and that is a tough corner in itself. This lap actually looks pretty good from Tregarthen. His current best is 31.6, and he crosses the line, does another 31.6, but that is a personal best with one improved position. Interesting too, Daniel Stevens will not register a lap time. He has a blown engine, so he will start from the rear of the grid.
That's one of our drivers who we were waiting on. The other one is Ashley Leah, who I suspect is on a lap right now as he comes through the last sector or two. McNamara crosses the line. 130.2 for him. That puts him into 9th. 10 laps completed for McNamara. Actually, Leah, by contrast, is on his 2nd lap. So, leaving it quite late, the Torque Inc. driver, isn't he?
Very, very late entrant to the series as well. He wasn't originally going to run. He was just going to jump in the Trucking Legends, and he's jumped in for the V8 as well. Posted his first qualifying time. So he's the last qualifier, but you'll be hoping he gets a little bit more out of the car. A few other drivers still get pretty lap times. Just noticed too, Gavin Cox. We said that we were expecting him to move up the timesheets. He has done just that, into 4th position.
Good effort. And now, an immense fight for P3. 7.61 the gap from King to Stevens. That's 10ths of a second away. And I'm just going to do the numbers in my head. It's half a 10th between King, Cox, and Carmichael. 3rd, 4th, and 5th. That is fractions. That is a small slide, a slight delay in applying the throttle or braking a millisecond too early into a corner.
Nothing between O'Keefe and Delaney in 6th and 7th either. It's about 100th of a second between those two. So heaps to gain for those guys as well. Whiting currently out there. He's the fastest. Sorry, he's done personal best 1st and 2nd sectors. Very, very competitive 3rd sector. So this might be a very, very good lap from him.
Well, let's follow it then. There's another fishy motorsports entrant. Tried to jump his teammate Delaney. Delaney 7th, Whiting 8th. Let's see if that order's going to change. One more substantial corner remains. Exit crucial for Whiting, and he applied that power well through 14, hugged that concrete, run the car out to the line. A 30.2. It's about a 10th off what he'd previously achieved, and he will stay in P8. He's got enough time to do another lap or two, so we'll bookmark him for a little bit later on in the session. Here's Reese Harnell. A bit further down the order than Whiting, but he could leapfrog him with this lap. Let's see what it does. 31.1 does leapfrog him. No, actually, just goes behind him. 700ths of a second slower than Whiting, plus a second. I read that
actually doing. Harnell's doing a race run at the moment by the looks of it. He's on his 6th lap, so he's using this time to try and work out how the car's going to behave later on. We have seen previous races in these and the current gen V8s that tyre degradation is actually a huge factor at this track, and making your tyres last throughout a run very, very important. As Anthony Green gains a spot, jumps ahead of Reese Harnell, personal best of a 30.9.
You notice the iRacing leaderboard updates quite slowly now?
I haven't noticed because I've been on the sim a lot more than you have. Are you talking about the in-sim one?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, see, I don't use that. You've been too busy off gallivanting around the countryside to notice things.
Yes, living the posh life. Gavin Cox is done for the session. He's brought it into pit lane. Here's a Jinx, Team Jinx shifter, or Henry James Racing. Take your pick. It's Henry King himself. At the first portion of the lap, about to be halfway through. About to be on the back straight at the number 52. Currently 3rd. So the best of that very tight midfield group. I heard a little crush as he went through the inside of that corner from Chopper Cam. Might have just grazed the inside concrete with the right side of that car, trying to maximise his speed. And very shallow, actually, his entry into that corner as well. So he's taking some aggressive lines. Let's see how this works out for Henry.
If it didn't end up with contact in the wall, this may be a decent lap, although his set times that aren't showing his personal best. They are looking very, very competitive in the actual time itself, so this could be a decent lap. He right on about what he'd done for that last lap, but doesn't need too much to jump ahead of his teammate in Aaron Gilbert. Also seeing Tregarthen and Mizomo on good laps at the moment, but King crosses the line. It's nowhere near his best. 8/10 off. Mizomo, he was thinking he was going to start at the rear of the grid.
He's crashed.
Well, he's crashed, so he might be starting at the rear of the grid.
Damage to the left, and that has happened at the entry to the back straight. Ashley Lear, has he had an incident as well? He doesn't look to be going particularly...
No, he's off the pace too.
I think he's found the same wall as Mizomo, and judging by that damage, it's in fact nearly identical. Actually, no. Ashley Lear found the turn 3 fence. Right in front of Aaron Gilbert, which ruined his lap, and Brett O'Keefe's. So I think that'll just about do us for qualifying here. Let's go through our starting grid for race 1 of this evening. It's Matt Stevens who has secured pole by 4/10 of a second. A stunning effort. Aaron Gilbert will start in second. Henry King in third place, ahead of Gavin Cox in fourth. Rob Carmichael and Brett O'Keefe share the third row of the grid, Jay.
Yeah, then we got Blake Delaney and Michael Whiting on row number 4. Row 5 is Sean McNamara and Tom O'Connor. Anthony Green and Reese Harnell on row number 6.
Ray Kitchen and NP Bakey starting on row 7. Nathan Tregarthen and Simon Mizomo just behind them. Ashley Lear will line up with Daniel Stevens and hopefully Justin Howe to round out our field. You'll see Ben Christensen and Hayden Veld in there as well, but they won't be taking to the start. They are a race control for this race. An unlikely duo for race control, if you ask me, but I am sure they will do a job of it as we take a look at your race details. 100 kilometers the distance, no pit stops required, and race 2 will have its starting grid determined by the finishing order of this one, bar those that finish more than a lap down. They will not get to have their starting spot inverted. 27 laps, the distance. Who's your pick?
Good question. I mean, the pace of Matt Stevens definitely very, very strong, but we saw last round the Jinx Shifter duo both were very, very strong, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them up the front. Fingers crossed, regardless of who wins the race, fingers crossed we just see a great fight and battle at the front. Fingers crossed we see a clean one.
Well, we're racing high-powered, slippery V8s on a bumpy street course. My money is on the safety car driver to lead at least a lap. We'll get 2 races for the V8s tonight. We'll split them by a Trucking Legends race in the middle. And we'll have a cracking night of racing here at Belle Isle in Detroit. Live on SimSpeed TV, presented by Racing Sims, New Zealand's supplier of the best simulators that you can find. As the clock runs down and we get set for a start. The lights come on, the revs rise, and for the first time tonight, the green flag is out and we're underway, and Stevens gets the whole shot. Gilbert's had a shocker and he's going to be under pressure from Henry King through the first corner. King trying to swoop around the outside, but Gilbert with the advantage through turn 2. They'll run wheel to wheel on the run down towards the third corner. Gavin Cox beating out Rob Carmichael, who switches to the inside for the braking zone. Carmichael trying to lunge it in. Gilbert beat out King, and Carmichael will complete that move on Cox. Looks like we've got through the first 3 corners.
Very, very nice move there from Rob Carmichael to get that move done on Gavin Cox. And to get through the first few corners, very, very good. Cox has made a huge mistake there, and Brett O'Keefe now trying to take advantage. It's checked up that mid-pack already. Front 3 have checked out, but the pack behind Gavin Cox is very, very tight now with that mistake.
Yeah, a bit cheeky from Cox as well. After he ran wide, he came back across the nose of O'Keefe, and it really checked O'Keefe up and everyone else behind him, as you saw. But now Cox has just regathered his momentum. That's an incident, and a Soul car spins off Nathan Tregarthen, the unfortunate victim. And no damage to his car, bar a little mark on the left rear where he was collected going in through the braking zone. But I've got to say, that's one of the cleaner first laps I've seen at this racetrack.
Impressive to see that we've only had one incident throughout the lap, and the field hasn't spread out too much. I mean, Matt Stevens definitely got a great launch, already 2 seconds ahead, but the rest of the pack all very close together. And another mistake for Gavin Cox, took the complete wrong line, and now he's well and truly compromised for the run to turn 3.
He's got the inside line though, and as we saw from Carmichael on lap 1, that's the line you want to be on. If Cox can have the confidence on the brakes, yes he can. O'Keefe tried to switch back, but he was too eager on the throttle, lit up the rear tyres, and Delaney now pressuring him. O'Keefe compromised through the sequence of corners that switch back on themselves. Delaney's going to have him set up down the back straight, I suspect, for a very good run.
The one to watch here, I reckon, might be Sean McNamara in the KRF car, because he's third back in the line, although he didn't get a great exit. But O'Keefe looks really strong. Delaney looks really strong here.
Too deep from O'Keefe. Way too deep. Delaney deep as well. Just missed the fence. O'Keefe, where did he fall to? Well down the order. He's just kept it off the fence as well. I thought for sure he was destined for the tyre bundle. He must have come to almost a complete stop to miss them. He's back in 12th place now. As a result, it's into the fence. In front of him goes Reese Harnell. Corey Kitchen. Sorry, Harnell had to take avoiding action. Tregarthen's gone around as well. Now it kicks off on lap 2.
Tregarthen's in big trouble too. He's got something not right with his car, and I need to pick up exactly what happened here, because he was it.
Here we go. Rear tyres would have gotten quite a cooking as they slid across this concrete track surface, but I imagine they could have cooled down a bit in the full lap he'd done since. So nevertheless, not the way that Tregarthen wanted to start this night off. As we pick up the live action once again, looking at Michael Whiting still on the back of Sean McNamara here, going for a look. It's a pretty late look, and yeah, he's too far back to pull that one off. Just showing McNamara that he's there though, and trying to unsettle him through the braking zones. Just rewinding a bit, Jake, that race start. It was very fortunate for Gilbert that we're at Belle Isle. If that started to come somewhere where we have a longer run to turn 1, he would have tumbled down the order, because he picks himself up an absolute bucket load of wheel spin.
If that had been at like the Nürburgring or at Barcelona with like a 600 metre, 700 metre run to turn 1, he would have lost 5, 6, 7 spots. But with it only being 100 metres from the start line, 120 metres from the start line to the apex of turn 1, very, very lucky we got away with that relatively unscathed. As Reese Harnell, I think, has hit the wall because he just lost a couple of spots. Have a look at this behind Corey Kitchen now. This pack is very, very messy. Lear, O'Keefe, Bozomo, Harnell and Kitchen all in this together.
Harnell's blown a motor. You can see the telltale smoke as Anthony Green calls for a tow from race control. I wonder where he is stuck on the racetrack. There he is. That's the inside of turn 2. Reese Harnell is going to call for a tow as well. He's now stuck on the escape road of turn 3. I wonder if we'll require a safety car for these two stranded cars. different places on the racetrack. Here's your replay of Anthony Green as race control calls for a safety car in the background. All by himself. Started this one from 11th, sorry, and is now 17th after a big lockup. And he missed the tyre bundle and found the concrete. Reese Harnell. Something similar? Perhaps. No. Much earlier. But it was a lockup that sent him into the concrete. So, a little similar, I suppose. Oh. O'Keefe dropped himself into the hornet's nest with that mistake earlier on. That's the second incident that's occurred around him ever since he fell down there in the short space of 5 laps. So your race order as we fall under the control of the Porsche Cayman safety car. It's Matt Stevens who leads the way after starting on pole. Gilbert was able to reclaim second despite a tardy start ahead of Henry King in third. Rob Carmichael is up to fourth, displacing Gavin Cox. Blake Delaney up to sixth. Sean McNamara has gained 2 spots ahead of Michael Whiting. Tom O'Connor. Corey Kitchen up 3 into P10. Brett O'Keefe, one of our biggest losers so far. But crucially, he has a clean car. As we see Daniel Stevens firing himself back onto the track. Out of pit lane, he's taken service. So is Tregarpen, though that is a necessity, I would say. Actually, Leah has gained 5 spots, Jay. Him and Stevens were the biggest movers, but with Stevens pitting, I would say now that actually Leah is our biggest mover in the field under the safety car.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Stevens pitted because he was already at the back anyway. He thought might as well come in and get some tyres and see if I can make some moves with fresh boots. And then after 4 laps, you do notice the drop-off of the tyres in these cars. So definitely a ploy that may make some sense for number 3 of Daniel Stevens. We'll see if it works, but I mean, he's got nothing to lose being stuck back as one of the last runners anyway. To come in and take tyres now, it's something I would probably do if I was in his situation. It's not a bad ploy. As the safety car pulls away, we're ready to go again.
A nice, short and sharp safety car intervention. That's what we like to see. Matt Stevens will control them. Getting set for a restart here in Belle Isle. A bit of conjecture, actually, from Stevens as he tries to determine which last corner is the one from which he can go. Is it the one they went through just there or the one up here? Well, he's going to go now in between both of them as we go back green, and Stevens gets a good launch, almost as good as his initial race start. And already looking for a move in the background was one of the Fishy Motorsports cars, wisely backing out of it. That was Delaney. Cox has not had a particularly strong launch there. Caught napping, I think, a bit behind Rob Carmichael. And Delaney looking to seize the advantage. Look at everyone looking for their own piece of real estate in towards turn 3. That was McNamara diving in on the brakes, Jay, and not quite finding the advantage he needed as into the fence. That was actually Leah who bounced off the tyre bundles. Mizomo goes through as in front of him. Brett O'Keefe loses another spot to Tom O'Connor, who runs wide, and O'Keefe has to jump on the brakes. Mizomo looking to take advantage. All a bit messy, I think.
This is a lot messier than the initial launch, wasn't it? It's just everyone already got their game faces on and wanted to go for it. The lead for Matt Stevens definitely not as big as he had before as well. You can see that Gilbert, King, Carmichael, they've broken away from that next group. And Gavin Cox, as we were watching, he had a horrible launch, didn't he? And Delaney couldn't get through. McNamara just held off from Michael Whiting, and McNamara also trying to make moves. So 2 really, really intense battle packs at the front, and then this big pack of cars for the rest back here, which is not losing any intensity.
No, it's not. Henry King looks very racy. He's actually given a... Oh, no. Who was that in the background? Bakey has gone hard into the tyres. Just saw that in the back of the shot. he has sent himself into the pits because that is some big damage to the left side of that car. Henry King, as I was saying, looks very racy. He's given Gilbert a couple of nudges, actually, since we've got this race back underway. He wants to get a move on, and he will be eager to do so because he's got Carmichael on the back of him, ready to make his own move. Now, as team owner down there, I wonder if King has any words to say to Gilbert along the lines of, get out of the way.
Unlikely, because they have battled pretty hard in other races, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them race very, very hard right up to the last lap.
That's what we want to see. Still 20 laps to go. Let's see it unfold. Potential move here for Delaney. Cox just delayed his turn back to the left ever so slightly there, and it just dissuaded Delaney from making a move. Smart racing from Cox. All about car positioning when you're defending. You've got to be careful. You can't just... Ooh, steady on, Delaney. You can't just outrageously defend the inside of every corner because you'll cost yourself an incredible amount of time. But if you can position yourself well to where you're not losing a huge amount of time through every corner from taking suboptimal racing lines, but the car behind just doesn't have enough room to go by you, then you're doing the right job. As we pick up the battle behind, Corey Kitchen goes for a spin, Jay.
One of the easiest corners to make that mistake to for Corey. He's gonna hate it.
Had to be done. As we take a look at the exit of turn 13, yeah, too much curb, unsettled the car, and as he tried to apply the power, balance just wasn't quite there for him. In live action, Mizomo just tried to send it 3 wide into turn 3. It was on the inside and he didn't gain any spots from it, but certainly showing his intention to move forward. Struggled in practice, struggled in qualifying, not showing the pace that he wants to show tonight. Bit of a lackluster performance by his standards, but having a good race so far, looking to move forward. Gavin Cox facing the wrong way at a very awkward spot, and what a job these guys all did to get around him.
That could have ended in disaster with the position of Gavin Cox.
Delaney got hit from behind in the ensuing checkup. So a double whammy. McNamara could not slow up in time. That's a very tough one for race control to call, I suspect, because if you actually have a look at that from McNamara's view, you'll see the wiggle that Delaney had that created the contact. And one may argue, if you're Gavin Cox, that Delaney was not up to the B-pillar. And Delaney will argue, I wasn't given the chance to get there by the corner entry because he put me in the fence.
Sort of helped amplify that incident, didn't it? So,
it was a forever closing gap. McNamara, the damage he's picked up unfortunately from that is hurting him substantially in a straight line. Whiting has just breezed past him. So that's unfortunate. It's damaged a number of cars. Delaney is now on the back of Whiting, and I imagine he'll get by him pretty quickly. Damage to the back of Delaney, damage to the front of Whiting. I'd much rather take the rear end damage with the new damage with the damage model they have. Oh no, engine's gone. Engine just went for Whiting on corner exit. And good job from Delaney to not spear into the back of him. I was about to say I'd much rather take rear end damage because you can still drive fast. Whereas with engine damage, you have the risk of that happening.
This will bring out another safety car, almost definitely. So the likes of Cox and Delaney, they'll be able to come in and get damage fixed. But yeah, that's unfortunate for McNamara to have that happen. We still haven't seen the safety car get called as of yet.
Yep.
We have right on cue, there it is.
so they can come in and get their damage fixed to an extent. There's no spare cars available to them in the V8SCOPS support series though, so if their virtual pit crew can slap on a whole new bonnet or hood to that car, then they might be good to go, but otherwise I think there might just be a case of serving as much as they can, Jay, and just hoping for the best, staying on the lead lap and maybe snagging a reverse grid pole for race 2, hey?
Very, very possible that that's what they're going to go for. One thing too is whether some of these guys in this second group or third group come in and take tyres, knowing that they're positioned back in the field a little bit. The likes of Stevens and Cox. Oh no, Tom O'Connor's just put it in the wall under safety car.
That's unfortunate. We're going to need a replay of this. Sorry, Tom, but we're going to have to see how you've managed this under safety car. So, thanks to Virtual Racing School, we can see Tom O'Connor's rather unfortunate accident. Having a good race as well up until this point. He was content. He forgot to shift down, so he was coming in 6th gear, and that's why it just suddenly stopped slowing and stopped turning. So yes, bit of a mismanagement on gear selection from O'Connor there, and that will leave him feeling rather sheepish, I suspect.
Wondering if he was actually starting to set himself up to come in for a tyre pit stop and wasn't paying attention to the road quite as much as he should have been, and caused that incident. Definitely a possibility.
The Matt Stevens tasked with gaining advantage once more, though it's not troubled him so far in this one. Gilbert needs to do something to go with him. Henry King, fast as he's seemed off both the start and first restart, has not been able to get by his teammate and stay ahead of his teammate. If they can just get ahead of Stevens, I think there's a race to be had, but with how tough it can be to pass on this street circuit. But Stevens, he's got the raw pace, doesn't he?
Yeah, Matt Stevens is doing a great job. Sorry.
Certainly in race 1. That's alright. You know how I go. I finish a point and then I quickly think of another point.
You make it sound like you've ended your sentence and then you start another one. But yeah, Matt Stevens race 2, if he can hold on to this lead, watching him come through the field will be very, very entertaining. Regardless of how this race plays out, watching the reverse grid is going to be very, very exciting. I'm looking forward to that. The restart with 16 to go.
Exactly the point I was leaning towards, Jake. So here we go, restart number 2. Not quite halfway through this one. Can Stevens do as he did before? He goes as he went before at exactly the same place and finds exactly the same result. He pulls away from Gilbert, King, and then 3 Fishy Motorsports cars line astern. Carmichael, Whiting, and Delaney have all found themselves together now.
Biggest mover in the field now is Daniel Stevens as well. He's up 11 positions. He now finds himself in position number 9. Just holds it on the exit of turn 3 as well. He's a little bit of damage to that right-hand side as well, as there's a little lock-up there for Aaron Gilbert. Henry King starting to apply a lot of pressure.
Remember, Stevens took fresh tyres on that first safety car. But yes, Henry King, much like safety car restart number 1, looking very racy on this opening lap. And Gilbert having to really push the limits of his 03 to keep himself ahead. But nevertheless, Matt Stevens has answer in abounds as he pulls away unpressured.
He's just got too much pace at the moment, doesn't he? I mean, his fastest lap half a second quicker than anyone else. It just looks like he's got it absolutely under control at the moment. does Matt Stevens. Is just seen Simon Mazoma has lost a spot there to Daniel Stevens. So Stevens up another spot of the Daniel variety, that is. And Ashley now applying some pressure to the back of Mazoma, who of course also came in and took tyres under that last safety car period.
By the way, Ford and Holden watch. It's 4 Fords lead the way out of 2 Holdens, 5th and 6th. So the Ford's looking particularly strong this round, at least in clean air.
Don't start a parody conversation. They're exactly the same.
They're exactly the same. Yes, they are on iRacing. That factor of real life did not translate to the sim, as Ashley Leah is close enough to pressure Mizomo. Mizomo does not feel the pressure, though, because he is stonewalled in his commitment to the racing line. As a lock-up here and a lock-up there and a lock-up everywhere from Daniel Stevens in front, sending smoke signals to the heavens. He is. And another one. They may be fresh, but they're not going to last very long. No.
He's struggling a little bit. Probably just driving the car a little bit. He's clipped the wall a couple of times in this lap too, so like everyone is just going to end up missing that front quarter panel in this race because they've all hit the wall at some point.
Yeah, it's one of those places where if you don't at least kiss the fence, you're not pushing hard enough. There's a move in the foreground. Rob Carmichael losing out as Michael Whiting goes up the inside, and rather pleasant, that one, between teammates. They're in a very strong position for these 3 team cars. Not one they're willing to compromise at the moment with intra-team battles, I would suggest. Oh, steady, lads. That's not a corner you generally go side by side. Gavin Cox eventually gives way to Tom O'Connor. Good move, though.
Very good move. I think that's just a situation, too, where Gavin Cox is damaged from that earlier incident. Just a little bit too much to hold onto the spot. Yeah, the Fishy Motorsport boys, they're still going at it. I mean, they're fighting, but they're not making themselves nuisances to each other. I've just seen Tom O'Connor's just hit the wall as well, so he's just lost that spot he gained.
BRS replay. Where's he done it? It'll be on the exit here. Just a little too deep. That's more than a kiss. That's a thorough whack. Buried the left front inside the tyre bundle and then through the right front into the concrete, which probably did more damage.
He's bringing it in to the pits as well, so he is going to have to get some damage fixed on the car. No surprise that he's come in. He may actually have a meatball from that one.
Mizomo now going defensive. He's decided that he must defend from Ashley Leah, who will try to go the long way around at turn 3. He holds the car there. Very strong exit from the talking driver, but Mizomo is going to fight back on the inside using the grass to try and swoop through, and loses the rear of the car with grass limiting his traction. Picking it up, probably shouldn't have used that grass to get through, and he might have held on, but valiant in defense, not strong enough for Mizomo. Yeah, that all started with a pretty poor exit. Yeah. So Gilbert's pulled away from King now, lapping quicker than his teammate, but 2/10 slower than Stevens on that lap. The lead out to 1.6 seconds, 2.3 across the top 3. Michael Whiting, half a second adrift of third place though, so he's not closing in on them, which is good news for the Henry James Racing cars. I'll tell you who is closing in. Brett O'Keefe looking to size up Blake Delaney.
This 4-car group's almost split into two car groups, hasn't it now, with Delaney dropping off a little bit from the back of Carmichael and O'Keefe starting to close in on the back of him. Yeah, O'Keefe's looking strong, although he did lose a little bit of ground through that turn 4, 5, 6 section. He's definitely closing in though, and Rob Carmichael wants that spot back. I tell you what, that's a little bit too much curb there.
I'm going to do the gentlemanly thing here, Jay, and tell you to go ahead and turn yourself up.
Okay.
Because Mizomo, who is racing on the racetrack, has just interjected over the radio.
I've worked it out. It's alright. I know what it is.
As Brett O'Keefe spins to get himself back going again. O'Keefe does a good 360. And whoop. How do you end up on the grass? Yeah, I guess. Just drive up there. Good place for a safe flick spin, isn't it?
Not a bad way to get yourself out of an awkward situation.
Yeah. I do think if Mizomo wasn't listening to the broadcast at the same time and interjecting that he could not hear you, he probably would go faster on the racetrack. Because he's about to lose another spot here. Gavin Cox is about to go by. There he goes. And Mizomo just let it happen. All the fight is gone from that man.
Well, I mean, both sides of the car are absolutely destroyed, so probably why he's given up the fight.
Holding on to the lead lap. Something that not many have been able to do. A list of drivers who won't be getting their positions inverted for race 2. Tom O'Connor, Sean McNamara, Corey Kitchen, Nathan Tregarthen, NP Bakey, Reese Harnell, Anthony Green. All of them one or more laps down, unfortunately. Have to start where they finished. He did just pick up a minute ago though, before we came to these two. Henry King had closed back up to Gilbert, hadn't he, Jay?
Yes, definitely has closed that gap right back down. That lap there, they were the same lap time, but the lap previous, it was around about half a second quicker for Henry King. So the gap is definitely closing. Henry not quite close enough to get the move done yet, but I reckon give it another 2 laps, he might start to apply a little bit more of a blow torch.
I think
that's a little wide for Aaron Gilbert.
I think he's feeling the pressure. Zol Gilbert. Missed it there as well. Had to delay his throttle application. He's wide as well there. He's missed all 3 corners since we've picked this battle up. He's missed another one. That's 4 from 4. And that was not a good corner to miss because it's given King all of the momentum onto the back straight. So, does Gilbert cover? Yes, he does. King goes to the left. Steady. This is where we saw the contact earlier, and Gilbert had no hesitation in coming back across completely and was fortunate that King backed out of that because that could have been contact.
Very, very close between those two, but as you said, good to see that they did get themselves into line and there was no contact. So that could have got very, very messy between teammates very, very quickly. What this fighting has done too, it's enabled Matt Stevens to absolutely check out in front. He's now to a 4.5 second lead, as that's really wide for Aaron Gilbert. Huge mistake.
I wonder if he's just overcooked those tyres a little bit. He's starting to feel it now. Slipping and sliding about. And Henry King might have just preserved the tyre life a bit more. He's on that lap. 2 seconds slower, Aaron Gilbert, than Matt Stevens out front. In fact, 1.5 seconds slower than Michael Whiting behind them as well. So Gilbert really falling off a cliff on that one. White again. Yeah, he is struggling. It'll be compounded now by the fact that King is behind and applying that blowtorch to his rear bumper. Probably getting ready to start talking in Morse code as well. Really screwed that one up. That was wide wider than it was the previous lap. This time, King's gotten to the inside. I wonder if Gilbert's just going to relinquish. He's broken much earlier. And he's let him go. So Henry King up to P2. Second and third step of the podium reversed for the Henry James racing cars. And then not too quick timing because Michael Whiting right up to the back of them already. Will be interesting to see what lap time this is for Gilbert. Pretty slow as well, I suspect.
So, looking at the live sector data, it's showing that he's 1.5 seconds off his regular pace on this lap. Henry King was about 0.5 off his regular pace. Whiting 0.2 up on his usual pace over the last few laps. So Whiting definitely closing in, and you can see the gap now. It's down to 0.5 second. Whiting is ready to pounce, and Gilbert doesn't want to make too many more of those mistakes because he will get gobbled up not only by Whiting but possibly Rob Carmichael as well. He's really struggling with that rear grip. So Gilbert is on struggle street at the moment, trying to keep this under control.
Whiting was 1.3, almost 1.4 seconds quicker than Gilbert on the previous lap. Now that Gilbert's got King in front of him, though, he can use him as a bit of a reference. Pick his braking points, pick his turning points. Use him as a guide to tow him around this racetrack. It does seem to be helping them because Gilbert has regathered some form of composure. He's keeping himself to the confines of the racing line, it seems. Here on lap 20 of this one. 7 to go next time they hit the line. That's Stevens still lapping in the 130s, while Gilbert in the high 132s for the last 2 laps. Let's see what the lap time is this time, whether Gilbert has recovered. He has, a 131.7. So, very bizarre. As if he just lost focus and then fell under immense pressure and succumbed to it. He's regathered his composure now somewhat as action down the order. Ashley Lear goes by Daniel Stevens. Lear up to 7th from 17th on the grid. Stevens 8th from 20th. Virtual Racing School replay of a move through turn 1 on board with Lear. How did he set this one up? Stevens, a big slide out of turn 12.
Oh, Tokyo Drift. I think those rears are a little shot there for Stevens, and he hit the wall there too, so very, very big struggle streak there for Dan Stevens.
His last lap was a 134. Really, really slow lap. But much like Gilbert, with a car in front, he's able to regain some momentum. Which is fortunate for Stevens because Gavin Cox is not that far behind, though they are teammates. Simon Mizomo lurks as well for the final top 10 spot.
Oh no.
In the fence, that's the 08, Blake Delaney. Awkward spot as go through does Leah and Stevens. Cox will probably fancy himself a move here. He's nosed it in, Delaney. I suspect he's just missed his braking marker. Oh.
That wasn't what I was expecting.
Rears. No, the rears. I wonder if he's accidentally hit his brake bias lever or adjuster, whatever he's got, button, and dialed a few rearward clicks more than he was expecting. And he's hit the brakes as a result, and the rear end has swung around.
Definitely an unusual incident, that one, isn't it? Just not something you'd expect to see at this stage of the race. You'd expect to see that during a practice session or something early on in a race, or even in a shootout lap, but not 20 odd laps into a race, 21 laps into the race. So unfortunate for Delaney though. He'll push on. He'll try and get a spot back at least hoping to get at least one, maybe two, because Lear and Stevens' overall pace has not been as good as Delaney's had been, although that damage to the car may hamper that pace now.
Speaking of pace, I reckon there's every chance of Gilbert getting back by King. Look at this. It's a second life for Aaron Gilbert. Here we go, he's got the run out of turn 2. King has to go defensive. Michael Whiting will watch from a distance, a front row seat to a battle. The second on the podium between Henry James Racing teammates. King wins out at turn 3. Gilbert unable to go around the outside there, as Leah did to Mizomo earlier on. Now it's King that is locking up the insides at every turn. Crucially though, he is able to find a strong exit onto the back straight. And I dare say Gilbert won't be close enough for a lunge down here. Certainly feels those mirrors though. This point of the race, it's all about minimizing that wheel spin, trying not to break traction and keeping that momentum up, because the tyres are screaming, aren't they, Jay? They've been used and abused, and as we've seen for some, they are truly beyond their usable condition to really be that competitive. You've just got to avoid sliding.
We'll have a look at the gap they've already pulled on Rob Carmichael. Remember, Carmichael wasn't that far away from these guys. You saw him in the back of shot not that long ago. He's now 6.5 seconds back. So these three have definitely found another gear in regards to tyre life. But you're right, making them last another 4 laps is going to be very, very tough. And Whiting probably looks like he's done the best job out of the 3.
Oh, no, Henry King! Gilbert slides by, misses him by an inch. Whiting as well steps onto the podium, and King falls off it with a mistake, self-induced. Pressure too much for the 52. We ride on board for a replay. And this, a slow car to the right. I wonder if that distracted him. He goes in too deep. The rears come around and whack. The tyre bundle greets him.
It's a big hit too. I guess the positive to come out of that, it was a tyre bundle as opposed to an actual concrete wall, but even still that car is going to be hurting. Rob Carmichael is not that far behind him, so the potential for Carmichael to gain a spot well and truly on. But Whiting now is really in contention for stealing second place in this race. Started 8th, now into 3rd, and could steal 2nd.
He might do, though I suspect Gilbert has the measure of him without King before him to restrain his pace. Strong result nevertheless for Whiting, +5 from 8th on the grid. Up into 3rd place. Has not made the mistakes, touch wood, that some very experienced drivers have shown themselves doing this one. It is those rear tyres though, the ones that have to apply the power and suffer the demand of all that horsepower. They're the ones that are screaming out in pain, and when you break traction, it's those that go as you spin helplessly into a corner. I think at this point, you've got to put your bias forward, don't you, Jay?
Yeah. Want the fronts to sort of your fronts at this point are usually holding on a little bit better than your rears because you've got nothing left from how much wheel spin you generate. Just going to say too, Henry King's pace is definitely not too bad. He's actually pulling away from Rob Carmichael even with that damage. Ashley is closing in on Carmichael, but probably not enough laps left for something to happen there. And the gap between 2nd and 3rd is stabilised as well. But this is our closest fight here. Delaney looks very, very strong. And we know that Stevens is struggling with those rear tyres.
Just 2 laps to go. A 10.8 second advantage it's ballooned out to for Matt Stevens with the drama unfolding behind him. It seems almost settled for Gilbert as well and Whiting. But Stevens, Delaney, Cox still disputing 7th, 8th and 9th in this one. Amazing how tyres have gone through cycles in this race. Stevens went from a car that looked almost undrivable to now at least he's able to drive through the corners. Though he's still sending smoke signals as often as he can. On board with Delaney. You can see, even from this perspective, the struggles that Stevens is having as we get a puff of smoke at every change of direction. Curious racing line from Stevens, just trying to keep Delaney out of that draft as much as he can. He's gone in very hot, just pulled it up. You can see that little puff of smoke right at the end of the braking zone, Jay, as he struggled to pull the car up.
Stevens is really, really struggling at the moment, and he's obviously been struggling all race long because, well, even in qualifying as well, because remember, he blew his engine in qualifying, so definitely not having the car behave as he would like. And I mean, Gavin Cox no doubt will be running the same setup. Of course, he was doing really, really well earlier on, but had some misfortune himself. They get the white flag. Delaney not quite close enough to get it done yet.
What's concerning for Stevens is he's come in and taken tyres in this race.
Yeah.
If we don't get a safety car in race 2, he really can't do that. He's going to have to make his tyres go a few extra laps. And judging by this, it's not a circumstance he'll be too thrilled about, as around the outside of a car that's locking up at every corner, I wouldn't do it. Oh, hello, there's a car stopped on the racetrack there. That's ND Bakey. He tried to get back out on the track. He was 11 laps down, and he will finish on the track. I don't think he'll get to tow back to pit lane, because here is Matt Stevens coming through the last couple of corners. He can celebrate now because he's 12 seconds clear out front. Lights to flag. Unchallenged by the rest. A cut above the rest. Matt Stevens wins race 1 from Belle Isle.
Very, very good race from him too. He's done a very, very good job. Battle for second looks like it's done. And Gilbert will hold on from Whiting. But that was a very, very good fight. And good to see that someone else is giving it to these front 3 as well.
Michael Whiting home in 3rd. Good result from him, up 5 in the race. And Henry King will be sorely disappointed to finish where he does in 4th. As Rob Carmichael has had a spin on the last corner. He will hold on to P5 thanks to the advantage he had over Ashley Leah, but a late scare. Didn't quite completely spin it, but it was about 90 degrees perpendicular to where he wanted to be facing. As Stevens will burn it down in celebration of a race well done. Now he just has to back it up and do it again in a little bit's time, albeit this time from should be P11 with the lead lap cars inverted. Here's how they finish. Stevens wins from Gilbert and Whiting, your podium. Henry King and Rob Carmichael, your top 5. Ashley Leah drives up to 6th from 17th on the grid. Blake Delaney finishes 7th. Daniel Stevens in 8th is your biggest mover, plus 12 in this race, ahead of Gavin Cox in 9th. And Brett O'Keefe running out your top 10.
We have Mizomo, the last car in the lead lap, in 11th position. Tom O'Connor in 12th. Then NP Backy, who DNF'd on the last lap, did get back out there, as you said. McNamara, misfortune for him. Corey Kitchen had to retire the car as well. Nathan Tregarthen, who we saw have issues. Reese Harnell blew the engine, as did Anthony Green. Lots of misfortune. Belle Isle definitely took victims in this one.
Indeed it did. Did we expect any less? No, I don't think we did not. It is a tough track to tame, and it is going to have to be tamed again when the V8s hit the racetrack for race 2. But before that, it is the Trucking Legends. They'll be on track very shortly. But as we get ready for that, we'll take a break here on SimSpeed TV. Stay with us. It's the Racing Sims V8SCOPS Support Series, Round 9 from Belle Isle. Welcome back to the Racing Sims V8SCOPS Support Series, Round 9 from Belle Isle. We switch from V8s to trucks. Big old trucks. Trucking Legends. And, well, we're going to see quite some spectacular racing, I suspect. Lots of three-wheel action. Plenty of two-wheel action. And do you reckon I can crop up onto one wheel around here, Jay?
Probably not one, but definitely two. And there'll be, as you said, lots of three-wheel action for sure. But this is going to be fun. We've seen this combination before in the Just Send It series, and it was always a barrel of laughs and a lot of fun. 10-minute race, perfect length for these trucks. Get about 6-7 laps of racing. It's going to be helter-skelter, lots of fun.
They're in qualifying at the moment with just 3 minutes remaining. Sam Stride is currently fastest ahead of Mitchell McLeod by quite some way. Tough to get a lap in these trucks. On the concrete surface or on the normal racing surface that's not dirt that they're designed to go racing on, because they are, of course, Lucas Oil off-road trucks before anything else. You've got to keep them as straight as possible, but all they want to do is slide, so you've got to really manage that throttle at times. So it can be really tricky, especially on the longer circuits. Fortunately, Belle Isle is not too long, 3.78 kilometres. Daniel Stevens is currently the championship leader for this series, and it's the final time we'll see this series in support action this year. The Legends will be the mini card support series for the rest of the year alongside the V8s and the Flat Sixes, Jay. So I guess we'll crown a trucking champion.
Well, the Trucking Legends Championship, of course, is for both combined, but yeah, there sort of is the separate championship within the championship, which Stevens is also ahead of. But yeah, we'll finish off the truck segment of the Trucking Legends tonight, and then we'll just have the Legends run the remainder of the series, which of course will be the next 3 rounds being endurance for V8SCOPS. We'll have a longer race in the Legend at Bathurst as part of the Bathurst 1000 Saturday night qualifying night. So that should be a lot of fun to see the Legends out there for that race in the middle of qualifying, in between the qualifying and the shootout for V8SCOPS Bathurst 1000.
And that'll of course come up in September.
Mid-September.
On the 15th?
Saturday in the middle of September. I think it's the 16th.
Perfect. I'll be here.
Somewhere there.
Perfect.
You'll be away.
I don't know. Not with COVID.
You don't know at the moment, do you?
I'm looking at Hayden Ballard at the moment, hoping he hits the fence, because he should be pretty fast in these trucks, and we want to see him start at the back. And that's probably not the way to go fast, sliding through the last corner. Yep, that's a pretty terrible lap from Hayden.
I mean, it's not that terrible. It's 1.3 seconds off P1, and he's just pipped the championship leader. A few faces coming in for the first time tonight. Lear, McLeod and Aaron Russell all in for the first time. Brett Loxton back out there again after a little bit of fun last week. And Nick Scrayev also out there. Currently P2 in the Trucking Legends Championship is Nick, so he's done very, very well for himself.
Yeah, he has. That's a good effort from Nick. Surprised Mitch hasn't appeared before. He's very good in these trucks. We see him often in the Pro Truck Showdown. He's a front runner by all accounts. So he is going to be one to watch across this 10-minute sprint. All about keeping yourself out of trouble and out of the concrete, unlike that man just there, who Mitchell McLeod just went by. Can McLeod finish a lap off before it boots him out of the session? No, he can't. Well, yes, he can, but it won't count, because he grabbed a fence somewhere. Drivers will get 2 minutes or so, actually, to finish off their lap. Let's see what Brett Loxton can do. Currently without a time. Anything will get him an improvement, except for what he did, which was an invalidated lap. So he will stay 10th. Aaron Russell, a 1:49.4, goes to 9th.
I think that's everyone.
Well, Nick Scrayev, no lap. Justin Howe, no lap. Henry King and Brett Loxton, no lap. 14 drivers, 10 of them set times. Let's go through your starting grid. Sam Stride secures himself pole position. Mitchell McLeod alongside him. Big gap from McLeod at Harnell, 0.6 of a second. Then look how close Harnell and Lear are. Just 200ths between them on row 2. Ben Christensen shares row 3 with his teammate Hayden Veld.
Yeah, then we've got Daniel Stevens and Simon Mazzomo on row 4, Aaron Russell and Anthony Green on row 5. As you said, Howe, Scrayev and Loxton all did not register lap times in the qualifying session. Henry King will be sitting there watching from the race control booth as well.
So King up in race control. Although race control often not needed in these trucks because they are such a beat and bang series. But there is a point to which the beating and banging can go too far, but generally these guys keep it pretty much beneath that point, which is fantastic. Almost makes you wish we had the genuine stadium super trucks in here, Jay. The ones designed to go onto the roads a bit better, and maybe have the jumps as well. But I think we do a pretty good job of making do with these Lucas Oil off-road trucks.
They're pretty close. So, I mean, they're not exactly, but they are close enough to be able to get away with being the same. I must say the sun starting to set quite quickly as well. So that'll be interesting for the drivers.
Well, where's it setting?
They will be driving into it as they come through the fountain section, and coming up to the last couple of corners.
And I'm glad you did not just answer with West.
Well, unlike the last time you talked about West and you actually talked about the East.
Yeah. So yeah, they'll have to contend with that into a couple of corners. As we line up on the grid. Who's that with their tyres pointed to the concrete? It's Hayden.
Hayden Veld.
Yeah, that seems about right. Keep an eye on that if he doesn't correct that up.
Shouldn't have said anything.
Yeah.
Would have been much more funnier.
Hopefully he's not listening to the broadcast. I'm on the broadcast, so he's probably not. So, Sam Stride on pole. Mitchell McLeod alongside him. Launching these trucks as well. There's no clutch. You've got to leave it in neutral before popping it into first gear as soon as the lights go out. And that's often caught drivers out, but I would say everyone in this field knows of the starting procedure for those trucks. I just saw Hayden's wheels straighten themselves up. So he is ready to go in the right direction off the start of this race. Waiting for just one more driver now to grid up. And we will go racing for 10 minutes. What'll that be, Jay, in approximate length of laps?
It's like 6 laps for these guys.
It's not much time. It's not much opportunity. But in saying that, almost every corner can be an overtaking opportunity when you're in trucks such as these. McLeod, Stride. They're all pretty aggressive, this bunch. This should be a good one. Final race for the trucks for this season. The lights come on, the revs rise. They almost caught me out with that one. They all got on the throttle very early, but now we are set for a start. And away we go. And a nice even start across the front of our field. Stride, though, will set the advantage as very tentative into turn 1 was, I think that was actually Leah. And he will go backwards as into the fence goes Veld. Loses no momentum, though. Leah immediately off to cover the inside. Stevens wants to split the middle. He's going to do so. Barely enough room for him. And around the outside goes the 11 of Ben Christensen. Good bold move from Christensen to go around the outside there.
Yeah, good job to not end up with a much bigger incident there too, as Mazomo and Loxton still side by side. And also in that too is Aaron Russell. So they're all getting through relatively okay by the looks of it. A little bit of biffing and barging, but they're all through. Sam Stride, though, leading the way. McLeod in second, Reese Harnell in third. His front 4 actually broken away a little bit of a gap.
Yeah, McLeod not letting Stride any advantage whatsoever. As Stride uses all of the inside curbing, something you can do in these trucks as opposed to the V8s we were just racing. Some of these drivers have to adapt very quickly because they were just racing those V8s. Some of them do not. That could be some form of advantage. There's Veld right up on the back of Harnell looking to get by him. Good start for Veld, up 2 spots.
There's
in the back
here.
Yeah, very busy. Who was that? That was Brett Loxton, who wants to get a move on. Trying to get by Justin Howe. Oh, into the fence, Anthony Green. Mizomo takes avoiding action into torque kink paint. That's interesting. Now Aaron Russell will dive through as well, but he lifts off. That checks up. Justin Howe. Now side by side into turn 1. They'll get away with it. Only because they're going so slow. 100 Ks or so, mid-corner speed in these trucks. And Anthony Green goes all the way around. No. Really struggling in the truck there for stability.
Loxton was lucky too to get away with that because he went the right way. Howe went the wrong way and ended up making contact quite heavily with Green, but Green continues on. Sam Stride starting to check out a little bit. Ian McLeod from Harnell, Veld, and now also Ben Christensen also getting involved in this one too.
Veld is being held up massively. He was hounding the back of Harnell on his rear bumper. He'll look for a move down the back straight. Here. Harnell doesn't cover, but Veld is not bold enough on the brakes. Harnell locks it up. Christensen right to his teammate's bumper. Just a little love tap to let him know he's there. Oh. Just can't get the momentum, can Hayden here.
It's tough to get momentum around this track too because it's such a stop-start circuit. Making sure you can flow yourself through the corners can be quite difficult. If someone is very, very slow, they can actually check you up when you're actually trying to get that momentum. So you just saw there, Val look much better through turn 12. It was just checked up a little bit right at turn-in, had to get on the brakes an extra little bit more than he would have liked, which meant that Harnell was able to hold on for another lap. 2 laps down, 4 laps to go.
Well, yeah, there's only 6 minutes left. The trouble here is he just needs to go. In Hayden's case, he just needs to go. He's pushing limits now, trying to find advantage that isn't there. He's got natural advantage in pace. Just load up the inside, lad. Have a crack. There you go. Give him a little escort, middle of the corner. That's exactly what he does. Hang him out wide on the exit. He'll have him perfectly maneuvered through this next corner. Textbook. Christensen wants to go by quickly as well, but Harnell covers him off.
And Lear's got involved in this now too. Right on the tail of Ben Christensen.
Hayden will look to run away, try to catch McLeod and Stride, who aren't battling, mind you, while they battle behind him. See if Hayden can bridge that gap. It's 2 seconds to the leaders, by the way. But I suspect McLeod's got time in hand to go and battle Stride.
Well, Stride and McLeod both very, very regular drivers in these things, racing in a Pro Truck Showdown, so they'll both be quite content working together to pull away from the pack so that then they can fight in the last couple of minutes. They'll probably be almost sitting nose to tail up until 2 minutes to go, and then they'll actually go and fight. But this pack here for third, they're not giving up. This is going to keep going the whole way to the end, which will help McLeod and Stride absolutely check out at the front.
Yeah, Hayden just hit every fence he could then, out of the back straight, which slowed him up, cost him a lot. Through the high-speed stuff there, the last 2 corners, you can see he pulls quite a bit on Reese Harnell, as Justin Howe looks like he's out of this race, unfortunately. On that lap, they've lost 1.1 seconds alone to the top 2. Here's the replay of why. Oh, that truck is crabbing.
Something's a miss there, isn't it? Oh, that'll be why.
Yep. It's actually quite unfortunate. You can generally get away with that, especially in these trucks. That's really bad luck for Howie.
Yeah. And he's a very, very quick driver in these things too, so he'll be quite disappointed to have had that happen. So we'll have to regroup and come back next time, of course, in the Legend. Next round in 3 weeks' time for these things.
Stridey is doing a really good job here out ahead of Mitch. Mitch has hit the fence a couple of times. Needs to close the gap pretty quickly. But Stridey is making him really work for it. The gap is 3/4 of a second at the moment. It's come down by 2/10 since the start of the lap. Hayden Veld has gained about 8/10 of a second and has run away from Harnell. It's all going to come down to the last lap, this one, Jay. Still 2 laps to go, though, when we hit the line.
That pack with Harnell, Christensen and Lear now is a group of 4, even though Velda's broken away because Dan Stevens has chucked himself onto the back of the group. Is now well and truly in the fight as well. So Dan Stevens in this one now as well. So, as you said, 2 laps to go. With plenty of time for moves to be made and positions to be gained. You don't want to throw it away at this point though.
Biggest driver on the racetrack that time by was one Mr. Hayden Veld. Could be a case of too little too late unless they battle in front of him. Christensen will be getting frustrated here behind Harnell as well, because I think he's being held up to the same extent that his teammate was. Here we go. Oh, he had a bit of an overlap, but Harnell just was able to cover him and stop him from crossing back over to the inside line. And that positioning from Christensen wasn't ideal either, because it compromised his run onto the straight.
Harnell was lucky he didn't get punted then, actually. It was, the way he's been moving around a little bit, it's very, very fortunate to not have ended up in the wall from a little bit of contact from behind.
Yeah. McLeod shot that gap down.
Oh, there he goes in the wall. Christensen can't take advantage, and now he's checked up Ashley Lear, who's going around the outside.
Good job from Lear to stop the car and pull it up and not go into the back of Christensen as well. Very good driving from all of them. McLeod's closed the gap though. It was down to 3/10 at the end of the back straight. It's growing a bit. It's now half a second. So, what has McLeod got on the bank for the last lap? Can Stridey hold him off? 4/10 slower that lap for Stride. Too much on the racetrack for McLeod on that one. Exiting the last corner, but he still got the better exit despite hitting the fence. Harnell defensive.
Big defensive move from Harnell to hold onto the spot from Brent Christensen, and actually right there too. Dan Stevens has closed in. Mazzomo and Aaron Russell also closed in, as well as Loxton. So battle for 4th now has 8 trucks in it. Very, very cool fight.
Onto the back straight. McLeod on the bumper of Sam Stride. This is going to be pretty decisive at the end of this back straight. The braking zone all too crucial. Where does Stridey place his car? Right in the middle of the racetrack. McLeod goes to the racing line. And now Stridey compromises both their speed, but he holds track position. Veld's too far back to capitalise on this battle. With just half a lap remaining. Harnell
just hit the wall too.
Harnell's got cars all over him, but still behind him crucially. Oh, Christensen with a huge send on Harnell. Somehow, they all still point the right way. We'll have to get a replay of that in a minute. But out front, Sam Stride fends off McLeod. And Stridey will lead every lap en route to the race win. In the final truck race of the season, McLeod will take 2nd. Veld on the podium. Reese Harnell, valiant defence for P4. Christensen, 5th. Ahead of Leah, Stevens, Mizomo. Loxton, Russell, Green and Skrayev.
Wow.
Yeah.
That whole sequence of corners was just completely messy there between Harnell, Christensen, Lear, Stevens and Mizomo. I don't know if he was trying to actually make a move there.
I think he was
just out of control.
Nah, he 100% was. He was on the inside and he just gassed it up and he went for it. I almost swore then. Almost, Jay. But never again.
Never say never.
Never say, who knows. There's your full results, by the way. 12.3 seconds in the end, covering our top 10. But they all felt so close together. Great
great
battles. Yeah. Fantastic race. Biggest mover in the end. Oh, that's disappointing.
Hayden Belle.
Yeah. +3 onto the podium.
He did do a good job though, because he did keep that car out of trouble, which a lot of other drivers couldn't do. So he did do a very, very good job in that aspect.
Certainly did. Was able to pull off that move on Harnell that no one else could, despite quite the effort from Christensen on the final lap. So that wraps up the trucks. We've still got more action tonight though. Stand by here on SimSpeed TV. Coming up after this, race 2, the V8s from Belle for the Racing Sims V8SCOPS support series here on a Friday night.
Hey everyone, the USF 2000 is a blast to drive now, and here's your chance to learn it quickly. From my tutorial, VRS created a free bonus track guide for the Laguna Seca circuit, where you can learn exactly what I do in every corner to improve your lap times and get faster on track. You'll learn how to easily recognise brake markers, you'll find out which curves to attack and which ones to avoid, you'll know when to use the full track and when a sequence of corners requires a compromise. And you'll learn how hard to brake and when to lift. The VRS quick reference track maps are available free to download and delivered each week to your inbox. The entire global MX-5 series is available, as well as bonus maps like this one and many more. So if you're a new racer, or a veteran, or just anyone who wants to learn how to get faster sooner, the VRS track guides are for you. Just hit the link or button on screen and get yours today.
Welcome back to the treacherous Concrete Canyon, the streets of Belle Isle, the host of Round 9, the V8SCOPS series, and as a result, host of tonight's Friday night V8SCOPS support series, presented by Racing Sims. And the sun is setting in the sim, racing towards the sunset, ready for our second V8 race and our final race of this evening. They'll line up the way they finished. The lead lap cars from race 1 will be inverted on the starting grid.
How good's my typo on that too?
To the top 11. And yeah, so race 2 reverse of lead lap cars. Very good, Jay.
Well done, Jay.
Very, very good. Speaking of, my name is Ryan Jones. Jay Kennedy still alongside me. proof there that he really can only focus on one thing at once, but he
Very
is
true.
doing two things at the moment, commentating and directing.
And good
Great
at neither.
battles. Jack of all trades, master of none. Great battles we saw in race 1. I think we're going to see a cracking race 2 with some of those drivers coming through the order. Really excited to see what Matt Stevens does. He saw no challenge in race 1, but he's going to have to pass at least, well, if he wants to win, he's going to have to pass 10 cars.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who makes major setup changes as well, because there were drivers that were really struggling. The track is a lot cooler for this race, so making some setup changes probably not a horrible idea for some of these guys that were struggling big time. The other factor too is, of course, safety cars meant that some drivers were able to come in and get tyres, so they didn't really get a good gauge on how long their tyres could last. So making tyres last for some of those guys that did pit, going to be very, very interesting. But the guys making their way through the field, the top 4 who we saw in that one, about 20 minutes ago, watching them come through the field is going to be very, very fun.
Yeah, it certainly will be. We've got just about 5 minutes before they send them off on their merry way for 27 more laps of action. Gilbert and King. That was an interesting battle, wasn't it? Between the two Henry James racing drivers. How did you see that one? Because Gilbert went through an interesting phase where it looked like his tyres were just completely destroyed. And then he fought back and looked the much better driver. King then threw it in the fence. What do you think? Do you think Gilbert or King, either one of them, going to make a change to their car for this race?
I think they both probably will. The one that I'm more interested to see is how Matt Stevens goes, actually needing to overtake people, because we didn't need to see him do any of that at all in the last race. He led from green to checkered and absolutely launched it away at every single restart as well. So that's probably the more interesting thing I'm thinking about. But in regards to King and Gilbert, I'm sure that Henry will be looking for a bit of redemption, because he will not be too happy with how that race played out.
Michael Whiting finished 3rd after starting 8th, so he's very well versed in passing cars and driving fast tonight. Certainly keep an eye on him in this second race. Though the likes of those that started at the back and finished mid-pack, they'll be ones to watch. Talking like Ashley Lear, Daniel Stevens, they're going to start a lot further forward this time. They're going to be a big pain, I think, for our front runners trying to come back through. Because I think if their night had started off differently, they'd be contending towards the front.
Well, even the likes of Mazomo too, who we saw struggle big time for pace throughout that race as well. He's starting on pole, so him at the front, how much will he hold up the pack? How much will those guys being out of sequence in regards to pace cause carnage? And will we see more safety cars? There's lots of interesting factors we're going to have come up in this next race. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it does play out. And the different conditions are going to play a big factor as well. Of course, cooler conditions means that the cars will behave a little bit differently. They might be able to save the tyres a little bit more, but some of the guys will think that that is almost a green light to push harder.
Temp just 28 degrees. And, well, yeah, Daniel Stevens, one of those drivers I mentioned, was fortunate enough to change tyres in race 1. He pitted under one of the safety cars, grabbed a fresh set of rubber, and still used it all up. If we don't get a safety car, he's going to be stuck in struggle street in this race, I suspect, even with cool attempts to aid him. Just having a look at the practice times. 20-minute session in practice, and some of the drivers were preoccupied with racing trucks. But Henry King was fastest until right when I opened my mouth. Matt Stevens just went to the top of the leaderboard with a half a second advantage. So Stevens has lost no pace in the last 40 minutes or so. But Rob Carmichael, that's a pretty good lap. Looking like he might have made some positive changes to his car. He's put himself between King and Gilbert on the leaderboard.
Yeah, not a bad lap time as well. So he's got some good pace. Of course, the times that we're seeing at the moment probably a lot more representative of what we're going to see in this race as to what we saw during qualifying, because they'll all be on race setup right now as opposed to being out there on poly trim. So this is a good little guide to see what we might see going forward. Carmichael and Delaney both looking very, very strong. Whiting a little bit further down than we might have thought, but he's also just taking it off the circuit to have a little breather, get himself fired up for the race, which is only a minute away.
And then we can go through our starting grid. Thanks to Racing Sims, we should have, what, about 16 starters for this one. Our two race control lackeys back in their place, ready to pass verdicts over any incidents that occur. Race 1 was pretty clean though. I was surprised and pleased by that. Opening laps were nice and steady. Veld and Christensen, our two race control advocates tonight. They were both racing in the trucks, and yes, Brett Loxton as well. The three of them actually appearing in the trucks as we hit 0 on the timer. And we get ready to go racing around Belle Isle, just past 8 PM in sim time, so quite late in the day, isn't it? But be enough light left for these drivers. Let's take a look at how they line up then with this grid-in version. Starting on the pole, it's going to be Simon Mizomo. That's going to be interesting. And Brett O'Keefe starting second. Gavin Cox, Daniel Stevens share row 2 ahead of Blake Delaney and Ashley Lear on row 3.
We go back to Carmichael and King on the 4th row. Michael Whiting, Aaron Gilbert, the 3rd and 2nd place finishers from race 1. They'll start in 9th and 10th. And rounding out top 6, the 6th row is Matt Stevens, who won race 1. Tom O'Connor, who was the first driver 1 or more laps down. He will start from 12th position.
Yeah, the rest of these drivers all starting where they finished in race 1 as a result of finishing more than a lap down. O'Connor, as you said, and then Bakey, McNamara, Kitchen, Harnell, Green. All of them will have some work to do. But Mizomo on pole. Troublesome qualifying practice and race 1. We'll see if race 2 can go more positively for him. Final race of the night. Lights out. And a great start from Brett O'Keefe. Mizomo bogs it down. The middle finger racing cars bounce off each other, trying to slip by him. They're 3 wide through turn 2. Mizomo very cautious. He's down all the way now behind Delaney into 5th place. He'll be disappointed with that start. A terrible launch because he's into the fence. Daniel Stevens, and he bombs it hard into turn 3, locks it up, and goes straight into the escape road.
Wow, it's heavy damage too for Stevens. He hasn't had a great night, has he? He's been very, very unfortunate. Gavin Cox, Blake Delaney continue their battle that they had from race 1 as well. This is going to be good to see. Henry King had a great launch at the start.
As Gilbert's been turned around and faces the wrong way with damage to his car.
No.
Daniel Stevens again in the fence. Reese Harnell with big damage. McNamara with damage as well.
It's part 1 with Stevens going straight ahead. And then you'll see here 0-3 of Aaron Gilbert. Just up the inside went the car of McNamara. And watch, here comes Stevens. He was almost like he saw what was going on ahead and reacted a little too much. Very, very unfortunate for him. That horrible night has continued.
Gilbert was caught on the outside of 3 wide. Probably did not realise it. Tried to turn in and found only a car on his left rear quarter panel. Bad news for him and McNamara with heavy damage. Stevens as well. His night might be done with that level of damage to his car. There is a train forming behind Gavin Cox. Look at this. They're all lined up trying to get by him as Brett O'Keefe runs off. Delaney thinks about a look there and decides better of it, but you can see how much quicker he is. Wants to get a move on. He's got his teammate behind him, Rob Carmichael. Then Mizomo back to 5th after starting on pole. He'll be... Well, it was a terrible start, wasn't it? Just completely bogged it down like Gilbert did in race 1.
Yeah, it just went nowhere, didn't he? But probably worse than Gilbert. So just the bottom of the screen there to Henry King up the inside of Mizomo. So King up to 5th. Matt Stevens also through on Michael Whiting. Although, big mistake from Matt Stevens. He's just lost the 2 spots he's already gained on this lap. Lear goes side by side. Nearly contact between them.
Yeah, that was bold from Stevens. Put himself in harm's way, but he got away with it by a whisker. Still, Cox remains ahead. Brett O'Keefe this lap will do a 1 minute 32.1. Kevin Cox a 1:32.0. So he actually doesn't do too bad of a lap time. But it is preventing anyone from catching that race leader. Delaney has had a bad exit there. He just had to back out of it because he was headed towards the concrete, and Carmichael shows his nose, but Delaney just turns in and says, no, this corner is mine. Carried much more mid-corner speed than Cox as well. Did you see that? Cox was really slow through the corner.
Cox looks like he might just be trying to conserve the tyres a little bit. He's just not looking comfortable. I mean, we saw the same sort of thing in race 1 where the MFR cars were struggling a little bit for grip and stability by the end of the race. I mean, they both had issues throughout as well. But, yeah, just not quite looking as confident as Gavin Cox did earlier in race 1 before that incident caused him some dramas. But looking like it almost a replay of race 1, isn't it, with the 3 cars all together here?
This is perfect for O'Keefe. The gap is 4.5 seconds to Gavin Cox, and the field lined up behind him. That's a really good exit for Delaney, but just a really, really inopportune moment to catch Cox. So he's going to go for it though up the inside of turn 1. It's bold. Cox is going to try to fight him inside for turn 2. And Delaney can't keep his car there and hold the inside for turn 3. Now his run is compromised. Carmichael with the momentum. King with momentum. Mizomo closing as well. Cox doesn't cover. It allows Delaney... Look at that, 2x2. 3 deep. It's like a formation. This could end in tears so bad. There's 8 of them. Side by side here.
This is a fantastic battle pack going on right here. Cox and Carmichael side by side. Delaney by himself. Then King and Mizomo side by side. Whiting, Stevens and Lear all together, and O'Connor as well. Gavin Cox is going to just hold on. Brett O'Keefe must be loving seeing this in the rear vision mirror, although he won't be seeing it for much longer. He's gone.
Oh, Stevens tried to send it on the inside of Mizomo. There's the contact behind as Whiting and Lear come to the fence. And they'll pick up some damage. They were 3 wide in front of them, but miraculously it was 2 wide behind them that wrecked instead. How was that? 2x2. 3 rows of it, with another car watching on as well. Never seen that on a street circuit before. Not end in tears immediately. In all of that, the gap is out to 7 seconds out the front. This is the 3 wide. Stevens on the inside into Mizomo, but then behind, as Mizomo just avoids the fence, Whiting gets into Lear. I think he was trying to avoid what he thought was going to be Mizomo in the fence. It never happened, and Whiting just looked a fool, unfortunately.
Matt Stevens now through on Mizomo, and also through Henry King on Gavin Cox. So Delaney, even though he'd been the faster out of the group, behind Cox for that little bit, stuck right behind Cox. He couldn't get through, his teammate Carmichael took advantage, and now King's taken advantage, and now they're two is Stevens and Mazzomo. So Delaney could still be stuck behind Gavin Cox, even though he was tucked under his ring wing before.
He should do it here. He's got the inside line. He'll outbrake him. Very shallow, though, on entry. He's going to basically balk Cox. Parked it on the apex. Stevens goes around the outside of Delaney. That was audacious. He had no right to pull that one off. Somehow he did. Stevens on a charge. So Stevens up to P6 in this one. P4 even, sorry. After starting this race in 11th. We're only on lap 6. 27. Plenty of time left to run. O'Keefe leading from Carmichael, who cut 7/10 out of his lead on that lap. Henry King, then Stevens, then Delaney, then Cox. Now under pressure from Mazzomo. Mazzomo showed the nose to the left and then darted to the right. Always wanted that inside line, did Mazzomo. Whoa, just pinched the rears though as he threw it in on the brakes. And now here comes Tom O'Connor as well. But that is not an overtaking spot that is favoured heavily by many. Still a huge battle pack, 5 or 6 cars.
Yeah, Mazzomo, Cox, O'Connor, Whiting, Harnell all together. Lear has brought it into the pits. He may be race done. Also McNamara and Green also in the pits, may be race done. Also heard from Daniel Stevens. He has a meatball flag, but he will serve that and get back out 4 points. So he hasn't had a great night, has Dan Stevens, but the fact he can still get back out there and continue on is a positive sign.
The Brett O'Keefe's lead, it was out as large as 7 seconds, but now that they're 3 behind him of slower moving cars, they're looking to try and close it in. I said Carmichael was 7/10 quicker the previous lap. He's actually going to end up losing a bit of time on this lap, about half a second worth of time he loses that time by. So O'Keefe has responded. Henry King though, 8 cents quicker. Matt Stevens, a second quicker than your leader. So the 3rd and 4th place cars, they're both very quick. I remember in race 1, Jay, when I said if only Gilbert or King could get by Stevens, then we'd have a race in our hands. Well, now King's ahead of Stevens. But it's for 3rd. And they've got to catch the leader. It'll be interesting to see what Stevens does here and what King does.
Well, they're both fast enough to catch the leader as well. So there's potential for them to both almost work together to close up past Carmichael and past O'Keefe. And then the last 2 laps, they've gained around a 1.5 seconds. Last lap by, Matt Stevens set the fastest lap of the race and was a second quicker than Brett O'Keefe. So he's definitely closing in. And O'Keefe will probably be trying to make sure the tyres last, whereas Matt Stevens is just flying away. He doesn't care. He's just going to push on as hard as he can and try and win the race.
And of course, a safety car will just throw it all up in the air, close them all up, and make life very difficult for Brett O'Keefe. On board with Matt Stevens. You can see as he fights at the wheel. The comparison between himself and the leader on the last lap, another 1.1 seconds. He pulls out of the advantage between O'Keefe and himself. Carmichael, by a comparison, was only able to take 3/10 out of the advantage.
Aaron Gilbert on his recovery, just getting back up into 11th position, just past his MP Backy, and there you can see in the background too, Daniel Stevens back out there. He'll gain a few spots in a couple of laps as well.
Yep, Ashley Leah, Anthony Green and Sean McNamara all in the pits, 2-3 laps down. Stevens 5 laps down, but he's circulating, so he'll gain those spots soon. battle for second on your screen. Carmichael will be under pressure in the not too distant future. King and Stevens. Now, if I were Stevens, I'd want to go by King because I'm quicker than him. Stevens that lap, a tenth quicker than King. He was 2 tenths quicker the previous lap. Now he's just sitting behind him and probably just taking a bit of an eye to see what King's doing and not quite pushing so hard himself. Again, the pair of them were about a second quicker than Brett O'Keefe out front. But if you're King, you want to keep Stevens behind you. At the same time, you don't want to defend because you still want to catch that guy out front. Tricky scenario.
King probably is more worried about what is happening behind him than in front of him at the moment. He just wants to hold on to the spot. He wants to make sure that he keeps Matt Stevens behind him, doesn't want to give up that spot. I think getting past Rob Carmichael is secondary because there's no point passing Carmichael if you let Stevens by. He's in the same spot, so he might as well make sure he can do everything he can to keep Matt Stevens behind. I think that's probably the key right now for Henry King. That's a horrible line though through turn 11, and he's very, very susceptible to a move here.
The best defense here for King would be no defense.
Best defense is a good attack.
Yeah. Hit your marks and get your hustle on. Put down some personal best lap times. That's what he needs to do. That was not one of them. That was a poor lap from both of them, actually. They were both about 3 tenths away from what they were doing. And O'Keefe will be loving that. 5.2 seconds, the gap from O'Keefe to Carmichael. "17 laps to go." Irrespective of what these three do, I think they're going to catch O'Keefe unless they go side by side for an entire lap.
Well, when Stevens got through and into this position, we checked it was around about 10.5 seconds behind the leader. He is now under 6 seconds behind the leader, so definitely is closing that gap in quite quickly. And you can see the three cars all getting closer here in this battle as well, so very, very good fight. I'm just going to quickly cut away because Gavin Cox and Michael Whiting, a little bit argy-bargy.
Big lunge from Whiting. Banging doors with Cox and then going around the outside of him at the very next corner. In the end, a well-executed manoeuvre. Cox may feel aggrieved, but I don't think he'll have much to say about that, so I think Whiting will be able to just drive away from him. Whiting will be a bit disappointed with how this one's played out. He's not been able to go with Stevens or King at all. And he'll probably struggle to get a top 5 out of this one, Whiting.
He's about 7 seconds behind his teammate in Blake Delaney. You can see just at the back of the shot here. This battle for second though, still well and truly on. Henry King though, right there, potentially is close enough to have a dive on Rob Carmichael, but decided against it at this stage. But the weaving in the background starting to get very, very ever present in Rob Carmichael's mirrors now.
Well, yeah, Carmichael doesn't have the pace to really challenge O'Keefe. He'll catch him, but he won't be a massive threat to him. He was only 3 tenths quicker than O'Keefe the previous lap, Carmichael. King and Stevens are much quicker. Here we go, King setting up for a move on the back straight. This is what we saw from Whiting on the previous lap. King struggled to pull it up though, and Carmichael is going to fight this one. And he edges King wide, forced him out of the racing line, and that's allowed Stevens to get through. Stevens wants to go for the bold move, and there's contact as Carmichael defends, and now King switches back to go back by Stevens. So as Carmichael disadvantages one competitor, another one is disadvantaged similarly, and now there's contact as Carmichael gets turned.
A little bit of latency issues there for Henry King, and he may not have even seen Rob Carmichael there at that point. Unfortunate, but one of those things that does happen, and Matt Stevens has been the lucky one to come out of it. What this has also done, it meant that they've lost around about 3.5 seconds back to Brett O'Keefe. So he's now out to an 8.5 second advantage. I've just seen too, Reese Harnella's bringing it into the pits. He's got huge damage on his car. Go back to the battle though. Henry King is going to have to lick his wounds and go again.
What I said, they'll catch O'Keefe no matter what they do, unless they go side by side for a lap. Well, side by side for half a lap, I think that's close enough. That could cost you a chance at a win. Losing about 3 seconds there. Can't do that again, but now that Stevens is out front, that's killed King's chances of winning this race unless O'Keefe can get out his defensive chops even harder than Carmichael could. King will need to hurry on by Carmichael as well.
No further action from race control for that incident as well. Probably a fair decision because legitimately I don't think Henry King even noticed that Carmichael was there.
No. That's what we in the game like to call netcode, Jay.
Don't swear.
Hey?
I said don't swear. Well,
He's a
Connor's
bit
starting to put a bit of pressure on Gavin Cox here.
Yeah, just have to look at their lap times. They were very even in the last lap, so O'Connor's been here for a while. Of course, they started at opposite ends of the grid. O'Connor just missing out on the invert after finishing a lap down. Gavin Cox falling from third on the grid after getting the invert. He's now back to 8th. He's the biggest faller apart from Mizomo, who will be livid with how this race has gone. He started on the front row, he's 6th, whereas O'Keefe, who started 2nd, leads by 7 seconds. Here we go, O'Connor on the inside of Cox.
Gotta be careful when you're on the inside at some of these corners. If you take too much curb, it unsettles the car way too much and you can't get the momentum. So just saw there from O'Connor, both of those attempts that he made there. Took too much curb, couldn't get it done, probably was a little bit too nice and gave too much room. You know what, there was no curb there, that was wall.
You can get away with it there a bit. Still got the mirror on the car. Hasn't got the left front guard though. I did see that was missing. And Aaron Gilbert is charging at them.
Gilbert's starting to close in quite quick. I mean, his pace is definitely down from what we've seen in race 1, but he's still lapping reasonable lap time. He's still faster than the leader, faster than these guys in this battle pack. So you should get by these guys relatively easily. Just at the back there, you saw Dan Stevens have a little moment and scrape the wall. You won't want to do that too many more times.
Halfway through this race, O'Keefe's advantage 5.9 seconds. Carmichael and King still stand in that order, but King now as close as he's been since that contact. Not a great exit. Fortunately, you can see that damage to the rear wing as well of Carmichael won't be helping him, or so you'd think. One would suspect that rear wing damage would hurt his stability in the corners and his straight line speed, but he seems to be holding on pretty well.
Interesting, this little battle pack also starting to get a little more heated. So Connor, Gilbert, Bucky all together.
Cox overcooked the corner.
Yep.
Out the end of the back straight, and O'Connor had a little nibble. Gilbert in 10th thought about it as well. Gilbert's just got to be smart here. He's got an abundance of pace more than this duo in front, but they're having their own pretty aggressive battle that he doesn't want to get involved in an untoward manner. And Big Bakey, all the meanwhile, is pounding the back of Gilbert pretty well. Daniel Stevens is there.
I think Gilbert's struggling for straight line speed with that damage that he's got to his car. So he's much faster in some sections, but not in others. And you'll see, once they get up here through turn 3, you'll pull away from Bakey and then coming down that back straight and closes back in almost close enough to make a move. So we'll see if we can see that a little bit more this time around.
Who gets the better exit? Gavin Cox, that's for sure. Gilbert's exit was good. His straight line it's pretty good. No discernible disadvantage there.
Hey, what, under brakes though? Bakey looked really, really good there. He closed that right in very, very quickly under brakes.
Yeah.
Very, very good job. I'm going to cut away though, because have a look at this. King is right there now.
Here's one Fishy Motorsports car under attack. And behind, another Fishy Motorsports car on the attack. Michael Whiting trying to get by Mizomo. Let's see if King can get the run out of turn 2. Too far back on this occasion unless he goes for one of those Hail Marys. No Hail Marys to be found on this occasion. There's Delaney. Lonely race for him. Behind him, there's Mizomo. And there is Whiting.
Gilbert's car must be so badly damaged because his pace is nowhere near what it was in race 1.
He did a 32.9 that lap, and Henry King did a 31.4. And we saw how close they were.
Matt Stevens is around.
He's in the fence.
Wow.
Pushing too hard, trying to catch the race leader. And he was doing it. He was only 3.4 seconds away with 12 laps to run. All by himself, through the braking zone. Turns it in. It looked like the rears maybe started to slide, and then, in order of catching that, he could not get it turned before the tyres greeted him on the outside of the corner. So he's now 10 seconds away again. And I don't think the gap is going to be caught by Stevens. Certainly going to be an interesting one to look at for Matt Stevens, one that he can now catch O'Keefe. Carmichael and King, if King can't catch Carmichael, can't get by Carmichael, Carmichael could yet win this race. Because he still has the pace to catch O'Keefe before this one's done.
Yeah, and his current pace is probably, got 4 laps to make the move. But Brett O'Keefe will be liking... I'm sure he's got someone in his ear telling him that there's been issues from XYZ person in the background, because all 3 of the cars that are trying to catch him have all had issues in the last 10 laps. So he's been loving what's going on behind him. He doesn't have the outright pace to deserve to be in the lead, but he got a great launch and he got a bit of luck on his side, and he's done a great job maintaining that gap as much as he has throughout this race. He's done a very, very good job.
He's just hitting consistent laps as O'Keefe. His last... Let's see what he does this time. His last 5 laps have all been within 4/10 of each other. His fastest lap of the race came on lap 3. So he's, of course, fallen away from that by about a second, but he's consistent. And that's what's counting for him at the moment while they battle behind and make their own mistakes. King has now fallen away from Carmichael. I wonder if he's done that on purpose to allow Carmichael some breathing space to not make a mistake and push on, or whether King made a mistake himself. Here's Tom O'Connor. It's a replay, thanks to VRS, that shows us... Boy! And so it shows us O'Connor getting a big tank slapper on the exit of turn 11, and Gilbert getting by at 12. But did you see the slide behind him, Jay? through
missed that
turn
one.
through turn 10. Look at that! That is glorious.
That was
Top
pretty
shelf.
decent, that one.
Absolutely top shelf. So Carmichael, now without immense pressure from King, is going quicker. I do wonder if that was a tactical move from King, just to allow Carmichael to maybe drive a bit quicker and not worry about his mirrors so much.
Definitely a possibility. Just drop off a little bit. Let the driver ahead just focus on their own race. And then they can... it's almost like then you're working together. Some drivers like having that car tucked underneath the rear wing for the concentration factor. Other drivers just like being in their own little air pocket. So these two are driven together quite a lot as well. So I'm sure that Henry would know what Rob prefers and probably worked out very quickly that Rob's pace was better when there was no one behind him. That gap between first and second now is down to 2.5 seconds and closing very, very quickly.
Well, the first lap without King up his bumper was the fastest lap Rob had done in 5 laps time.
And look at the difference in that time between he and the leader, 1.2 seconds quicker. So incredible pace he's got at the moment.
Stevens is going to get there as well, by the way.
Yeah.
He's blazing. So despite all of the dramas for Stevens, he's still in with a shot. But he is going to need them to fight ahead of him.
And the pace that they're all going, they're almost all going to come together at the same time.
What we like to see. What are those races they do at the Grand Prix? Jay, where they stagger the different types of cars.
The speed test or the ultimate speed comparison.
Yeah, it's almost like we've done an ultimate speed comparison, isn't it? And we've lined them all up at different stages and let them loose, and they've all come together at the same time, right at the end. Right how you want them to.
The Major Series doing a Predator race. Where, all the different classes all get let off at different intervals and see who comes out on top.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah, that is exactly what that is.
Often wondered, never pondered. King's closed back up now. Now that O'Keefe is within striking range, he is not comfortable with Carmichael being free of pressure. He wants to be there in case there is a mistake made and an opportunity at the lead presented. Suddenly there's 3 cars within a second for the lead of the race. With 8 to go. He's been all by himself since the start of this one. O'Keefe handed the lead thanks to Mizomo's awful start. And now he slides through turn 11. He is feeling that pressure, is O'Keefe. And he goes shallow into 12. He wants to protect this lead. It's going to draw Stevens ever closer every time he defends and slows them up. And it will become a 4-car train before not too long. 2.5 seconds back to Stevens.
Really good battle pack though now to have these guys fight for the win. Still 7 laps to go, plenty of time left in this race as well, so anything can happen, probably will happen, because we could see any of these top 4, even top 5s take a win in this race, because there is every chance that these top 4 could take each other out.
You can see Carmichael and King both looking for a bit of clean air into the braking zone back at turn 3. Thinking about moves, thinking about braking markers. They'll do something similar at the end of this back straight here. Or maybe Carmichael will even go for the move. Maybe a car length too far back this time. O'Keefe leaves no shadow of a doubt. And he's positioning that car well. He's not going full defensive, but he's moving it over about a car's width, isn't he?
It's just making sure that there's nothing that could, or he's leaving no doubt in his own mind that there's no move going to happen, but that's A bit of wheel spin there might leave him susceptible.
Tried to chase him, couldn't do it. Door left ajar, Carmichael through. King follows, O'Keefe back to third. Stevens says, hello, look who's arrived. And he goes through, O'Keefe's given up. Rolls off and lets them play. The top three may yet have another twist in its tail because still the fastest cars do not lead this one. Carmichael has kept King at bay for many laps, but there's 6 to go still on this race, and King is sliding in on the rears.
This is going to be a great fight all the way to the end between Carmichael, King, Stevens and O'Keefe. And O'Keefe isn't out of it. I mean, his pace isn't quite there in comparison to the others, but if he can stick on the back, there is still a big possibility. We've already seen contact between Carmichael and King already. We've seen Stevens make a mistake, the only one in this group.
He's going to have to cover. He's had to cover, Jay, because look, King's got a great run. What about the outside move at the end of the back straight? Careful of the concrete. Or if he'd have kept the overlap, he'd have been in with a huge chance of taking the lead away. Carmichael holds on again. And now Stevens is right there. Every move King makes will make him susceptible as well to Stevens behind. A very tricky scenario now. That's the car in the middle, trying to attack and defend at the same time. Especially when the car behind is undoubtedly the quickest. Five laps left to go.
What a fight this is going to be all the way to the end. King wants this move done. He wants to get through and make sure that he does it when Matt Stevens isn't close enough to be able to get a move done himself. So you saw him think about doing a late lunge there to make sure that he could get himself clear before Matt Stevens tucked himself through and was able to hold it on the opposite side. Matt Stevens is sitting back a little bit, almost enticing Henry King to make some banzai move. But Henry King is there now though.
Just as they did last lap, they go wheel to wheel around the end of the back straight. This time it's much better for King on the exit. He holds it on the inside and Carmichael slides and King goes through and Stevens will follow. But he runs wide and Carmichael just gives him the space. Vents him off for a corner. Stevens with the exit. Just has an overlap. Deep on the brakes. And it is second. So Carmichael back to third. And now Stevens set forth with the task of running down and catching and passing King with 4 to go. Earlier, it reminded me of an ultimate speed comparison test, Jay. Now it reminds me of one of those races in the velodrome where one by one they all drop off the lead pack until they are left with the final sprinters for the lead of the race. The Mizomo and Whiting are still going at it. They've been going at this for half the race, it seems.
Yeah, Whiting was right alongside there. You saw him at turn 1, but Mizomo was able to get the momentum through 2, so he's going to hold on for a little bit longer. We go back to King, Stevens, Carmichael. Stevens a little bit too far back at this stage.
Now that King's got clear air, he can do some of the quicker laps he's done this whole race. Some of his pace has been masked by Carmichael being in front of him for quite so long. King is very stout as a racing driver. Though we did see him make a pretty big mistake when Gilbert pressured him in race 1, didn't we? Has he learnt from that? There's going to be 3 laps to go and we cross the line here, and Stevens has closed up quite a bit through the last 2 quarters. As we look back to Mizomo and Whiting once more, the battle for P6. Mizomo has started on pole and Whiting who started 9th.
We've fight going on between these two as well. Both probably evenly matched in pace, but Whiting in race 1 was definitely a lot quicker. But this race here hasn't had the pace that he had in that first one. The Zomo definitely has improved from where he was in that last race as well. So this is going to be a very, very interesting fight. 3 laps to go.
Michael is holding on pretty well, by the way. If the top two... Oh no, Whiting.
Oh, Whiting.
That'll be music to the ears of Mizomo as he would have heard those tyres squeal behind him. Carmichael's holding on here. If they battle in front, there's still a chance of snagging a spot. As it stands, he still is on the podium. Brett O'Keefe a distant 4th after leading so much of this one. Stevens is starting to set himself up. Swoops wide, trying to find the exit, using all of the track, rubbing the concrete. Henry King in front needs to hit his brake markers and not lock up, not run wide.
Oh.
Do not let it slide, just like that. He hit too much of the curb. Car was unbalanced. Stevens caught him at the wrong time though. He couldn't get the exit. 2 to go.
Great fight going on here for the win in the Belle V8SCOPS Support Series round. This is going to come down to who gets the drive out of the last corner, I feel. Nothing in it between these two at the moment.
There's going to be a move from Stevens. There's no way this will finish without some form of attempt from Stevens, though he's made it so hard for himself. He's had an incident all by himself, trying to catch O'Keefe when he could have passed him and gone by without anyone else in the picture. Instead, he's had to catch and pass not only O'Keefe but King and Carmichael for a second time. He'd already done it once. He's having to do it twice. He's got by Carmichael, but King still stays in front, quickly running out of time. Stevens is much better in that corner, isn't he? Every lap, he closes in right there.
This is a part of the track that Stevens has looked the strongest over the last few laps, hasn't he? He's just seemed to have the momentum there, and King just seems to have a little bit less rear tyre grip. Barney's waving the white though. Henry King isn't waving the white. He is not giving this one up.
It's the final lap here at Belle Isle, and Stevens is right there on Henry King. King surely has to just slightly cover off the braking zone for turn 3. He does, and Stevens takes the racing line looking for a switchback. The momentum, any little hint of a move that he can make to get by into the lead of this race. He hasn't led a lap all race. King's led the last few. O'Keefe led the majority, but he's back in 4th now. Carmichael led a couple. He sat in 3rd, hoping for an incident between these two. There was the all-crucial exit onto the back straight. King, that's a solid advantage. Stevens is too far back into here, but he's so strong in the last sector, Jay. A slide from King there.
Who's going to hold on? They've all got no rear grip left at all. King, Stevens, Carmichael all have nothing left in the tyres. You can see all of them absolutely working the wheel to try and hold on. None of them have got any traction out of the corner except for Carmichael, who did a great job.
Stevens gave King a bump. It hurt Stevens' exit. Carmichael got the run as a result, but through it all, King. What a drive up through the order. Henry King wins race 2 of V8 Support Series here at Belle Isle. What a race we saw, and a well-deserved victory for the Henry James Racing driver. A very good comeback from a disappointing race 1.
Good drive from Brad O'Keefe as well to steal a 4th position. Of course, started in 2nd, finished race 1 in 10th. Mazomo finishes 6th, Gavin Cox in 7th. And Whiting ended up DNF after that spin we saw him have earlier.
Yeah, it's a real shame for him. It took him quite some time to get it turned back around again. What a job for King to withstand that pressure after making mistakes in race 1 under such similar pressure. And to hold it out and take that win across the line. Stevens tried everything he could, even applied the bumper at the end, but could not be. 3/10 the winning margin for King. Stevens finishes second, Carmichael third. Brett O'Keefe finishes fourth in the end. Delaney fifth, Mizomo sixth, the head of Gavin Cox, Tom O'Connor, Aaron Gilbert, Michael Whiting is a lap down in 10th.
We go over the page to Harnell, Green and Dan Stevens, the last drivers to finish the race. Of course, with a fair bit of damage for those 3 cars. Backy did not finish. Ashley Lear got unfortunately put into the wall. McNamara as well unfortunately had a horror end to the night. Just see a change of position there. Anthony Green just dropped back 1 spot, so something has happened there. Val, Christensen and Loxton, they all were part of race control. As I just see that's a car upside down.
Typical post-race shenanigans, isn't it?
Definitely something.
What a night of racing we saw here in Belle Isle. Just a taste of what's to come when the big boys come to play. 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Sunday nights. Right here at the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle Circuit. Split 2 and Split 1, 35 cars apiece, ready to rumble through this concrete canyon. Make sure you hit subscribe to SimSpeed TV so you don't miss a moment of the action. Jake Sperry and Reece Gardner will join you for that coverage. Next round for V8SCOPS and the V8SCOPS Support Series, we head to Imola, and the Support Series will consist of the Flat Sixes and the Legends. Make sure you're tuning in then, 7:45 p.m, 13th of August, Friday night. Until then, there's plenty of action still to come. I hope to see you there. But for tonight, from myself, Ryan Jones, and Jake Kennedy alongside me, it's been a blast. We'll see you next time.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going around the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to
Oh my god! Oh! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, here we go.
Oh no!
That's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh my god.
God, what?